Thanks for inviting me, and thank you all for being here. I told my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, that I was invited to have a TEDx talk on empathy. And she couldn't stop laughing. and I was like, okay, perhaps she's right. And it made me think of this thing that happened to me. And a year ago, a guy came up to me in a bar here in this building. And he went straight at me and looked me in the eyes and he said, "Chris, you're poor." And first I got really mad with him. And then I realized he was serious and he wasn't talking in economic terms. And I was like, okay, please tell me, what's the problem here? And he looked at me and he told me, "Chris, my name is William. I've known you for 3 years now. I've been working with you in 3 different organizations, and you have never seen me. You have never remembered my name." And that really struck me. And I realized I have to work with this. I have a problem. So, I'm not really an expert on empathy, not at all. I'm quite cynical, like we all are, sometimes. So, when I was invited to talk on empathy, I had to take a step back and recap on this journey that started with William telling me, I don't see people. So, I believe empathy is not something that we just have. I believe it lies within us, but I believe empathy is released in certain types of situations. I think empathy is released when connection occurs. Someone told me people are like onions, that people have layers. When you first meet a person, you have to peel off some layers to get to know him or her. When you first see a person, you see the outfit, you see the gender. You can perhaps make up some stereotypes. Perhaps you have a single story on that person. And there are layers beneath. And you have to peel off those layers to get to connect with the person, to start empathizing. 6 years ago, I went to South Africa. And I was trapped in this conference facility. I was there at a conference representing Norwegian People's Aid. For 10 days, I saw only black people from all over Africa. No white people there at all. But on the final day, we were sitting in the bar, having a beer. Everybody was excited. It was our last day together. And then some white people came in. And those white people were the most rude, racist, redneck people I have ever met. And they were the only white South Africans I've met. So, when I left South Africa 6 years ago, I had a single story on white South Africans being really racist, rude, redneck people, benefiting from the apartheid when it existed, and still benefiting from the societal structures in Cape Town where all the white people own everything and all the black people are poor and less fortunate. That was my single story. So, when I went back to Cape Town, back to South Africa last summer, I went there with a lot of prejudice. I was angry, and I was actually planning, without thinking about it, that for all the white people I met, I really wanted to know, what did you do to fight the apartheid when it existed, and what have you done to make up for it? I went there with a prejudice and a stereotype that all white South Africans were racist people. But I got to know a lot of people during my 3 months stay there. And many of those people were white. And one of those white persons were Keisha. And I was like thinking first when I met her, I realized she wasn't doing anything to solve the societal structural problems. She wasn't going to the townships to help the black people. And I wanted to ask her, what have you done? How can you still live in this society benefiting? Like you inherited stuff from your parents. Why are you not giving anything away? You have all this poverty around you. But I got connected with her. I got close. Well, even though she's beautiful, not that close. We became friends, and I started realizing we were both born in rich families, relatively speaking. I haven't done anything to help the poor people in my society. We both have our dreams, sometimes big dreams. I realized I was just like her. Who was I to judge all white South Africans? So we have some dreams, and we don't want to sacrifice the stuff we have and the lives we have without having a certain type of security. I'm not trying to say to you that you should be amazed that there are white, okay, cool South Africans. That's obvious, logically speaking. But I'm trying to tell you that you should be aware that you might have these kind of single stories on other groups, like I had with white South Africans. And I realized it is okay that people don't do something in their society to help the poorest people there. I realized people may be okay, even though they don't try to save the world. But I still want to save the world a little bit. I always dreamed of saving the world. And trying to save the world is not the normal recipe to become successful, at least in this country. We tend to look up to people who make a lot of money. But we do also look up to the people who sacrifice themselves for a greater purpose. And are these the only two options? These extremities? Or is there anything in between? Well, last spring I attended a class at the University of Oslo called Social Entrepreneurship. And that is actually about being successful, living the life you want to live, making money, but doing what you do for a greater purpose. And I met some other people when I was in South Africa, studying social entrepreneurship. I met Lynn. She sacrificed something. You always do that when you start a business. But she actually made her living room a factory. She invited poor, less fortunate women, black women from the townships who otherwise couldn't have gotten any jobs to her house. And they used old Coca-Cola bottles. And they're making these beautiful boxes that they're selling all over the world. Even in Norway, you can find these boxes. And they're running a successful business. And I was inspired by meeting Varki George, the manager of an NGO called Shako. Huge organization, living a successful life. He's paid fairly well, supporting people like Lynn. These people really inspired me, and I wanted to do something. And I actually already had a plan. I had this project I was working on. Because my first assignment at the University of Oslo, when I attended social entrepreneurship class, was find a societal problem, solve it, and make money from it. Make it sustainable. So I was sitting in my home, working this task, like, oh, how can I save the world and make money? Like, that's not easy, I'll promise you. I couldn't find any solution. I mapped all the societal problems I could think of. Don't do that, it will just make you depressed. But then I looked around me and I saw in my closet, and you're gonna recognize this. There was a lot of glass, metal, and stuff piling up in my closet. And I was thinking, maybe I could pay a less fortunate group to take this away monthly. That was the idea. And I've been started working on that. I was so inspired in Cape Town, I wanted to come home to Norway and actually make this happen. And I'm quite proud that I actually built an organization or a company. I have proven that people are willing to pay for this service. We have 85 customers now, and we're aiming for 500 customers by the end of this year. And I've proven, more importantly, that people suffering from drug addiction are able to work. And I want this to be about more than bottles as well. So we have created the Dream Day, where we want to give the surplus of this company so that the drug addicts working for us, or the former drug addicts, can fill their days with meaningful activities. Because one of the problems about being a drug addict, or when you get over the drug addiction, is finding a meaningful life with a network with non-drug addicts. That's difficult. And building this company has been a journey to me. And this journey started by William talking to me and saying, Chris, you don't see people. Because I've had some experiences during this build-up. And the first one was the error I did by not talking to the right people. When I got this idea, the first day I went to talk to the mayor of Trondheim. Why? I went to the manager of TEDxTrondheim, student welfare organization. I went to the waste company. During the first 2 weeks, I went to talk to people who work with drug addicts. I talked to professors, talked to a lot of people. But during the first 2 months of working really hard on this business plan, I didn't actually speak to any drug addicts. How stupid is that? And the next error I did was when I first met with a drug addict, I had quite a lot of prejudice. The 23rd of March, 2011, I went up to this girl in Trondheim Torg. And I said to her, "Are you a drug addict?" And she was like, "Hey, yeah, what do you want? Are you going to sell me anything?" And I said, "Well, I have this idea. Would you bother listening to me for a couple of minutes?" And she wanted to listen. And I told her I had this idea. And she liked the idea. So we went to Edgar and sat down and had a talk. And I convinced her to become my first worker. And after we had settled that, I asked her, "Silja, what do you dream of doing?" And she told me this crazy story about wanting to start a school, a theater school for disadvantaged or less fortunate children in Tanzania. I thought, like, get real, girl. You're selling street magazines. You're a heroin addict in Trondheim. This ain't gonna happen, never. That was my thoughts. Luckily, I didn't say that. I asked her, "Okay, how are you gonna do this? How can you do this?" And she told me she had actually been living in Tanzania with poor people, with poor kids. She had actually been working at the theater of Molde. She had a lot of competency. She knew a lot about what had to be done, and she explained it to me with a great, she was very enthusiastic about it. I really believed that she could do it. The only thing stopping her from doing it was people like me, who didn't believe she could do that. And the second thing, the third error I did was, after getting to know Silja, getting to know that she was 26 years old, like I am, after getting to know she's from a tiny village, Lom, like me, from Tynset, after getting to know that she had a childhood more or less like mine, that we were just alike, even after getting to know that stuff, I had prejudice. I remember catching myself in looking over Silja's shoulder when we were in the grocery shop to return bottles, to check if she was stealing anything. And I still catch myself surprised that I have so much prejudice. And I see, like, I still catch myself being surprised that people have education, people have dreams, people have hopes, people are enthusiastic, that they've had good jobs. The drug addicts I've been working with, that's the people I'm talking about. So I had to widen my perspective, and I started reading, and I started asking all these questions, and I realized the magnitude of this problem. Please, all of you, close your eyes. I'm going to do a tiny experiment. And I would like you to pull your arm up on your left arm. There are 1,500 heroin addicts in Trondheim. Now imagine that you are injecting a shot of heroin in your arm. This is an ugly picture. You can open your eyes now. You're approximately like 70 or 100 persons. You're not 1/10 of the heroin addiction population of Trondheim. They wouldn't even fit in the grand hall. Imagine all of them injecting the shot at the same time. This is an ugly picture, but it connects. It makes you aware. This is actually a huge problem. And that's what I realized. And you have to have this connection to start empathizing. You have to know that a group exists to empathize with it. I don't think the problem is that people don't care. I think the problem is that we're all disconnected. We're disconnected from the bus driver. We're disconnected from the people sitting next to us on the bus. We're disconnected from the cleaning lady. We're even quite disconnected from our own friends. We have to connect to start empathizing. I'm going to do another tiny experiment. I would like you all, this might be a bit uncomfortable, I would like you all to look deeply into the eyes of the person sitting next to you. And try and hold. This is a bit difficult, but try and hold the connection. Try to look into the eyes of the person sitting next to you. And this feels uncomfortable. Keep looking at each other. Okay, you can stop. Now you were all laughing now. And I know why. You were laughing because looking deeply into the eyes of another person is quite uncomfortable. And laughing is your defense mechanism. And now you know, you were looking at people quite similar to yourself. People that you can like relate to. You're from the same background almost, or you might be. Now imagine looking into the eyes of a person that is completely different from you. A drug addict on the street. I know when I'm walking the streets of Trondheim and I see a drug addict, for example, selling the street magazine Sorgenfri, I avoid eye contact. I walk in a huge circle around that person because I know if I look into the eyes of that person, I will feel vulnerable because I'm not going to buy the magazine. And I'm not confident enough to know how I will show that person that I'm not disrespectful. So instead, I pretend that person don't exist. The beggars and the street magazine vendors. I still do this. And I tend to like pretend that it's okay for me to do that since I'm working with drug addicts. But it's not. I'm disconnected. So I have been trying to connect with people. I've been trying to look people into their eyes. I'm trying to be comfortable or try to like have enough self-esteem to actually try and do that. I'm looking into the eyes of the bus driver, the eyes of the people sitting next to me on the bus. And I'm trying to connect because I know I have to work on this. And I've realized looking people into their eyes is the key to start making conversation. That's the key to connecting to people. Who are all the people around us? I've started asking people that I don't know who they are. I'm actually writing a book now on 10 completely random persons to try and find, do these 10 random persons have an interesting story to tell? And I've written the 2 first chapters, and I know from 2 really random persons, I have 2 really interesting chapters. I think we have to peel the outer layers of the people around us. I think we have to start connecting. I think we have to start looking all the people around us in their eyes, like William told me to do. Chris, start looking in the eyes of the people around you and try and remember who they are, or at least be a little bit curious about who they might be. And start talking, making those conversations. Peel the onions around you. Thank you for your attention.